Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Lab. My name is Zan Zerbel, and for anyone who's new to the lab, this is where we have conversations with a wide range of adventurous individuals to educate, stoke, and inspire. In today's episode, Liz Craig and guest host Mallory Tyler speak with three badass women, Syd Long, Kimber Cross, and Theresa Silvera. They will be sharing epic adventure stories, discussing partners and adventuring with men, as well as how to empower women in the outdoors. And with that, on to the show.
Our guests today are Theresa Silvera, Kimber Cross, and Syd Long. These three ladies each bring similar and different experiences in the mountains to tonight's show. So Syd Long. Syd is an emergency department and trauma registered nurse and an ultra endurance trail runner based out of Portland, Oregon. She generally prefers self-supported style epic adventures, but is stoked to be training for what I think is not her first 100-mile race later this summer. She's also the race director of the Three Corner Rock 50K, which is a volunteer-run ultramarathon held on the PCT. Syd gets fiercely excited about supporting and empowering runners who take part in this special event. She and her 10-year-old son, Axel, are both ambassadors for the Mountain Shop and enjoy biking, hiking, and backpacking together. Welcome, Syd.
Thank you.
So next we have Kimber Cross. Kimber is a kindergarten teacher and adaptive athlete based out of Tacoma, Washington. She is also a climb leader for the Mountaineers, a volunteer-based organization that provides climbing courses in rock, glacier, and ice. Kimber has been an avid alpinist since 2015, and over the past 2 years, she has focused on ice climbing using a custom prosthetic Petzl ice tool, as she was born without fingers on her right hand. A short film is coming out later this year, which is going to feature her ice climbing journey. Welcome, Kimber. Lastly, but certainly not least, we've got Theresa Silvera, a music teacher and outdoor enthusiast based in Portland, Oregon, whose outdoor passions focus mainly on mountaineering and trail running. Adventures where these two activities are combined tend to be her favorite. Theresa also enjoys volunteering as an ambassador for the Pacific Northwest Outdoor Women group and creating opportunities for women to connect and adventure outdoors together. These three are here to share with us their epic adventures, endeavors, projects, and more. From trail running to ice climbing, backcountry skiing to mountain biking, mountaineering to trad climbing, we've got it all covered among these badass ladies. The floor is now yours, Liz.
Thanks, Mal, Theresa, Kimber, Syd. Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. And Mal touched on it briefly in each of your bios, but let's kick things off and let each of you tell us about your sport or sports of choice and what was the catalyst into each of your respective fields of adventure. Theresa, why don't we start with you?
Okay, so my two favorite activities are trail running and I guess climbing / mountaineering, all sorts of climbing. I grew up in Washington, and so I've always kind of had this like interest and fascination of like the outdoors, but never really got into it as a kid. Like it just wasn't something that our family did. And then I moved to an overpopulated city in California and realized how much I missed it and being close to like volcanoes and forests and stuff. And so after I graduated college, I moved back up here because my current partner lives here. And after getting really burnt out in grad school, decided that I wanted to start doing more outdoor related things to, I guess, fill my time and do something that wasn't just music related. So started with hiking, and that led to trail running. And I think my ultimate goal the whole time was to be able to climb mountains, just because I like grown up surrounded by them in Southwest Washington where I grew up. So yeah, it was just kind of like this natural progression. I the first mountain I climbed was Mount St. Helens in the winter of like 2015. And it was like a really ill-prepared climb, but it was definitely something that got me excited for mountaineering and got me motivated to like train better and take classes and stuff to learn more and just be more prepared for future climbs.
Oh, that's awesome. And Kimber, your alpinist career also began in 2015, correct?
Yeah.
What was the bug that bit you and kicked off your mountaineering career?
Yeah, I had a friend that had known someone who took the basic alpine course that the Mountaineers, an organization out here, teaches. And so she was really into it. And we were hiking friends, and it just sounded like, yeah, Rainier, that'd be a fun thing to climb. So we signed up and joined it. And little did I know that it would just kind of spark a passion for the alpine and rock climbing and all of the amazing volcanoes we have out here in the Northwest. It just became this hobby that I did not want to quit. I just wanted to keep getting involved in. And then, fast forward 5 years later, I finished the basic, the intermediate, and then I started leading climbs and instructing. And yeah, it's a fun passion of mine to do the ice, the glacier, the rock year round. So
Do you have a favorite?
A favorite? Ice. Yes.
Yeah.
And then I do love my volcanoes. But yeah. I mean, rock's fun, but give me some type 2 sufferfest on a volcano any day.
Yeah. And Syd, what about you? How did you get into like ultra endurance trail running, training for 100-miler? And as Mal said, it isn't your first 100-miler?
It's not. It'll be my second one.
Awesome.
Yeah, trail running and like it's really like endurance sports or endurance days are kind of my choice sport, whatever that means. I mean, running's kind of the easiest, most accessible thing for me to circle back to. I did not have really an athletic background at all. And it's kind of a crazy story how I got into it when I was 30 and I was 7 months pregnant with my son. And I went out, I thought I was capable of going for like, a 4 or 5 mile hike. And I went out for a hike and I ended up getting lost. And for I'll spoiler alert, I'm okay, but I got lost for 3 days. And I thought that like what I could do was hike 5 miles. And what I ended up doing, because I just had to, I was like climbing over these mountains and valleys and it just kept like, this ceiling of what I thought I could do. I just kept like shooting through it. And by the end of it, it was like I had done this huge mileage and, it was like what you can do, what you think you can do and what you actually can do are so different. And, while that was like I wouldn't have chosen that experience, like in hindsight, I kind of would have, because it was a big turning point really in my life, like feeling like anything you wanted to do, like, anything I wanted to do, I feel like I can do it. You have so much more reserve than you think. It really kind of altered my perception of what you're capable of.
Oh my gosh, that's very intense start. Getting out to the outdoors. Wow, that's crazy. I had no idea.
My follow-up question to that is, where were you? Where did you get lost?
It was in the Ventana Wilderness around Big Sur, California.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a beautiful place to get lost. Glad
it was. Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, but like keeping along that same line, what would you guys consider your biggest accomplishments to date? Kimber, do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah. I have really found that the biggest accomplishment beyond like getting all the volcanoes done and doing all these peaks, where I'm just hiking and climbing for miles. Ice climbing has been my biggest accomplishment because it wasn't something I thought was ever possible, but specifically a climb or an ice line that I did this winter in Highlight Canyon up in Montana. It's called Fat Chance, and it was my first kind of on the sharp end, led the whole thing, and waterfall ice 3, and just being able to know that I can lead on ice safely with my prosthetic and comfortably. That to me was my biggest, like, oh my gosh, it's not just top roping with a prosthetic tool, but I'm on the sharp end. So I think currently that is my biggest, like, I did it.
Yeah. And like Syd said, like, you could do anything now. I mean, you've proved to yourself that you have the skills and capability to do it. Like, that's awesome. That's super, super cool. I've never even led ice, and like, still scares me, and I have 2 hands. Like, Theresa, what about you? What's your biggest accomplishment to date?
I don't know if mine is so much like epic outdoor adventure related. I think my biggest accomplishment, like personally for myself, is applying to be an ambassador for the outdoor women's group that I'm an ambassador for, because like being around people and talking to people is one of my biggest fears. Like this whole experience right now is fun, but I feel like my stomach is gonna fall out of my butt right now. Like, I'm super nervous, and that probably wasn't something I should say in front of however many people, but whatever. So that for me was my biggest accomplishment, was like putting myself out there to be like an event coordinator or a hike leader, or just like leading educational events. Like, those are things that I never saw myself doing because I'm like just not super social. I just like don't do well socially. So that's still for me my biggest accomplishment, is like just putting myself in front of other people and like offering what I guess what I can do to help get other women outside.
That's awesome. That's really, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to like put yourself out there, and like, I know you've done some presentations for the PNW Outdoor Women group, and like that takes work, and like you're sharing with people and they're going to use that advice. So that's a pretty big accomplishment. And what about you, Syd?
I had a hard time I have a hard time thinking of like any one thing that physically I've done. I feel like the thing I feel most accomplished about is when I'm finding a good balance of challenging myself and pushing myself and parenting. And like I said, I did run a 100-mile race before, and that was like 5 or 6 years ago. And then I realized I had kind of reached an imbalance of training too much and putting too much energy into it, and it was taking away from parenting. And so I was like I haven't run an organized race in several years because I kind of just put it aside to focus more on having adventures with my son and parenting, and doing a lot of self-supported adventures in the meantime. And to me, like, signing up for 100-mile races at the end of the summer isn't really about the race. I mean, who knows, it might not even happen. It could get canceled. It's more about like just kind of holding myself accountable and knowing that being on that kind of training plan, I'm going to have a lot of adventures leading up to it. And even if it doesn't happen, I'll do something really big. But at the same time, kind of just finding like the balance in doing all those things together feels like the best accomplishment.
Yeah, no, totally. And that was like, someone actually asked a question about like, what tools and systems do you guys have in place to commit the time to these endurance sports? And like with significant others, partners, friends, like any of it, not just kiddos. So like, I guess, Sid, do you want to start with that one and address how you balance parenting with training for a 100-miler?
It's really hard. And I think like I can't even talk about it without acknowledging that, you know, doing any of this, like being an adventurer is like, I have to acknowledge there's like a massive amount of privilege behind that, you know. I mean, there's like class privilege, there's white privilege, there's access to, you know, childcare, to, you know, all kinds of things. So that's kind of like what being an adventurer means. So, I mean, you have to acknowledge that that exists. And then it's a lot of like, it's a big commitment. And it's, I think for me, it's what I would be doing anyway. Like, I love just like, you know, getting out and trail running is really like what I love to do. And it's what I would choose to do over any kind of like social engagement. And so that's just more important to me. So it ends up being what I kind of funnel my priority into. So I think there's like a lot of time, you know, there. And I'm also, I'm a nurse. And so I have kind of a nurse schedule, which it's really long days when I work, but it ends up being like, can be like, you know, I can work several days in a row that I'm kind of just focused on that. But then I'll have, you know, a solid week off. That's kind of a lucky schedule that a lot of people don't have too.
Yeah, having those extra, that like condensed schedules, so that you have like a extra long weekend every week sounds very nice as a nurse. Kimber, Theresa, do either of you guys, I know Theresa, you guys both have significant others. How do you balance adventure with their adventures and then training for stuff?
Go ahead, Kimber.
Yeah, I have an amazing career as a teacher that takes a lot of work, but then does also allow me time on school breaks and the summer to do the outdoors. So I'm really grateful for a career that provides the time, and it's a career that really, I find I'm better at my career when I do take my time in the mountains. So yeah.
Pretty cool teacher, kindergarten teacher that's like an ice climber.
Yeah, they learn about a little bit about mountaineering here and there each year.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know what a nice tool is by the end of the year.
And Theresa, what about you?
So I'm lucky that my significant other also likes being outside and probably doing like dumber stuff than I like in terms of like endurance running especially. So both of us do pretty well at balancing like coming together for certain activities, and then also kind of like supporting each other and doing our own thing. And then I also am a teacher like Kimber. I have a different schedule. Mine's more like after school teaching because I teach music lessons, but it allows me the time in the morning to do a lot of stuff, which is when I usually fit in like most of my like regular Y-East climbs are before work, just because I've gotten trained enough to make them happen before I have to go in to teach. And then I also get a little more flexibility in my schedule over the summer when I have a lighter teaching load, and it gives me more time to get out and do maybe like bigger adventures or bigger commitments. So yeah, it's definitely a privilege to have that kind of opportunity in my life right now.
Yeah, for sure. Having someone who's dedicated and interested in the same kinds of hobbies as you, I'm sure it makes it a lot easier.
Right. Our next question, we've got a question from the crowd. So what female athletes do you look up to in the outdoor industry? And do you have any mentors, anyone that you follow and has inspired you so far?
I do. There are so many women that luckily I've been able to watch through Instagram or build relationships through social media, or even women who are part of the Mountaineers in the Northwest that I've been able to climb with and learn from. But I think my biggest mentor, or a person that's provoked me to believe I can accomplish the goals that I want to in the outdoors has been a North Face athlete, Maureen Beck. She is known for rock climbing, but she does ice and mountaineering as well. And so years ago, 2-3 years now, before my ice tool was even created, and I was thinking like, oh my goodness, like ice climbing, I can't do that without holding two tools. Like, how's that going to work? Someone showed me a picture of this woman climbing with a prosthetic, and back of her head, blurry picture, but I knew like, well, it can be done and it's going to be done. And I was able to find out who that was. Over the years, she and I have formed a sweet friendship, and we've been able to climb together on ice and rock. But that was really the catalyst of, oh yeah, this is doable, this is possible, is seeing someone like me go before me. And that it leads into the whole why representation is so important in the outdoors and in inclusion. And so yeah, Mo Beck, check her out on the gram. She does cool things.
She was actually at the Kragan Classic at Smith Rock this year.
Yeah, we both were. It was fun.
Yeah, that was cool. I ended up climbing on the same wall as her and topping out a pitch. I was like,
Sweet.
this is cool.
Rad.
Theresa, what about you?
I don't know if I have anybody super specific that inspires me on a daily basis, and I definitely haven't had any female mentors as much as I would have really loved to have female mentors getting into climbing especially. But I do really admire outdoor women in general who also kind of make this extra effort to organize and put together events and groups like She Jumps or Brown Girls Climb or She Moves Mountains, all these other women-centered groups that are inspiring other women to get outside and creating opportunities for them and just making it a more accessible and safe space. So yeah, mainly specific groups and then the organizers and leaders and founders behind them.
Yeah, and it's so great to see so many organizations these days stepping up and being founded to help get us female athletes out there into the outdoors and providing those educational tools and providing climbing partners and just being a network. Because as someone who's new to the sport, it can be super intimidating to get out into the mountains, especially if you don't see anyone like you out there. So I think that's really great. What about you, Syd? Do you have any specific mentors and why they've become your mentors?
I really admire Caroline Paul. She is kind of a super athlete of all kinds, and she was one of the first San Francisco firefighters, and she's written a couple of books. One of them is called The Gutsy Girl. It's kind of targeted towards preteen girls to read, but I loved it. She writes a lot. I mean, I take away a lot from it about kind of parenting style. She just writes a lot about how she became who she is. Like she's such a great adventurer, but she's very humble and funny in the way that she talks about it, and open. You know, there's no kind of elitism about her, and she just talks a lot about how like how important it is to teach girls to be brave and to teach them to have to like empower them to have adventures, and also just like how she came to be how she is, and like how she did the things she did, and how she learned how to like kind of embrace fear, and how to like, and how fear is really close to like exhilaration, and to just, it's just really great the way she talks about it, and she's someone I really admire.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So after wrapping all of that, what are your latest projects that you guys are working on, or any adventures that you're working towards or training for?
I have some big routes planned not in the PNW right away, but the Grand. Some climbing friends and I are looking to do Exum Ridge and Black Ice Couloir. So a little rock, a little ice, all in the Tetons. I was there last summer and didn't get to climb, but got to be around there and just stared up at it like, oh my gosh, I got to get out here and get on that rock. And so I'm really excited for that. The first few days of July is when we'll be attempting our summit. So that's
cool.
Yeah.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
The rocks are just like giant, like the holds are just like giant crystals. It's like unreal. It's so cool. And Theresa, you've got a pretty big project going on right now.
Yeah, so I turn 30 this summer. And like several months ago, I was trying to figure out like what I wanted to do is like a fun challenge, I guess. Something that was kind of achievable, like, but I decided that I wanted to try and get in or get to 30 summits of Y East. And at the time that I came up with the goal, this was like back in November or December, I was at 15. And I was like, oh, like that 15, that doesn't sound like too difficult, because I try to go out like once a week or once every other week. And I was like, oh, I have until like end of June, July. And then everything closed down. And I was like 100% certain that I wasn't actually gonna finish it, because by the time everything closed, I was only at 21. And as you know, the closures continued, I was like, like 9 is not sounding super achievable anymore. But then everything, well, not everything, but Timberline opened back up and, you know, made the Southside climbing route more easily accessible again. And in the last week, two weeks, I've been able to fit in another 4. So it's starting to feel more achievable now. And I actually just decided last night, after being inspired by just another climbing friend / acquaintance on social media, that I wanted to use these last 5 climbs to fundraise for 3 organizations whose missions are kind of like personal to me. So that was exciting to launch this morning, and it's going well so far, which wasn't expecting, I guess. But it was been nice to see people like actively involved in wanting to contribute and being supportive. So it's given a little more meaning to these last few climbs. So I'm pretty excited to I'm a little more motivated to get them done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
And Syd, what about you? What's your 100
Yeah,
miler? Anything else
there's
stewing in
that.
the pot?
You know, the thing that I'm like really on fire to get done this summer is this loop called it's Spider Gap Loop. It's up by Glacier Peak. It's like a 44-mile self-supported loop, and I have been trying to do this for years, like a couple of years now, and I've gotten caught in like wildfires and a snowstorm and like just something always and it's like you need kind of like a 3-day window because it's like a 6 or 7 hour drive from Portland, so you kind of need like the day before and then the day after because it's such a long day, and then it's also a short window with snow and everything up there, but I feel like this is the summer I'm gonna do this. I've gotten pretty excited in doing these things called BRB, which is like bike, like biking, riding my bike somewhere, and then like stashing my bike in the woods and running and then like biking back. So I've got some kind of plans of getting that in as some long training days. Mostly just maximizing. I feel like I'm always looking for what I call the triad, which is like no work, no kid, and good weather. And like those are like the magical days, and if I maximize those days, then I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah, totally. And especially in the summer when the days are like 16 hours long and it feels like there's more daylight than sleep time, like I just want to be outside the whole time. I totally get that.
Gotta take advantage.
And then Kimber, I actually wanted to circle back to you. You also have a film coming out on prosthetic climbing. That's kind of a project going on too.
Yeah, so for a couple of years I've partnered with Peak Refuel, and they're a freeze-dried meal company. You know, we all get dehydrated meals for camping and climbing, and they're freeze-dried. Just an awesome company. And so they're doing a series in the next couple of years, having films come out called Peak by Peak. And so it's just people kind of in their outdoor elements getting to share how they overcame the peaks in their life and accomplish their goals. And so I was lucky enough to get flown out to Provo, Utah, and lead on some ice with a close buddy of mine and have a whole film crew. We're doing some more filming out here when it's safe to do so amidst the pandemic. But it'll be a pretty cool thing to be able to take to different climbing gyms and show the film when it comes out later this year. But kind of a fun thing to do, to ice climb and then kind of, you know, see cameras moving around and whatnot. But I just want it to be a visual to people that have limb differences, and I want their minds to be blown like, whoa, this is possible for me. And yeah, so I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out for that, and you'll have to share it with Mountain Shop and Adventure Mates. We can
I'll let you know.
share it with the crew.
Certainly.
All right.
Awesome. Well, so in all of these projects and all of your big adventures, I guess, what do you look for in an adventure partner? Like, are there specific characteristics you look for in someone, or are there scenarios in which you go it alone and find yourself in remote places, kind of out there on your own, relying only on yourself for navigation and all that? And how do you work out when you go in a group and when you go solo? Let's just go and start with Theresa.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the like adventure or whatever activity that I'm doing. For climbing Wais, I actually prefer going solo. Like just when I'm doing the south side route, I like being by myself on that mountain. It just kind of feels like a second home, and I don't mind like going with other people and sharing the experience with other people. I really enjoy that. But I think all of my most enjoyable experiences have been like when I'm by myself on that mountain. But for other stuff like, you know, big all day trips, especially when there's like potential for risk, like more risk involved or something, I definitely prefer going with my partner just because we know each other really well, and we balance each other out, and we know how to handle each other when one of us starts to lose it. So I guess in for bigger stuff like that, I like to go with people that I've been able to build up my rapport with, I guess. And I don't feel like I have a ton of friends that I would completely trust to go on specific things with, just because I haven't done enough stuff with other people. But yeah, I think for me, I like going with people that I know really well, and we know how to work with each other if things like don't go as planned. And we both have like maybe a certain level of like comfort and risk that we're willing to take. Like, I think that's really important too, especially for anything that's more climbing related. I like going with people that kind of have that similar level of like conservativeness when it comes to taking chances and making certain decisions.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, knowing how your partner is going to react in a scenario ahead of time is a huge help in the mountains for sure. Saves time and helps you think more clearly.
Yeah.
Kimber, what about you? What do you look for in partners?
I look for partners that will do the pitch that I don't want to do. No, but truly, I think character and that plays such a big role in being a good partner. And so a person's ability to exercise humility and critical thinking, flexibility, and then of course, you know, just have those skills, the technical skills, the wilderness first aid skills. I try on harder routes to, you know, always go with partners that I know will be patient with me, but also like push me where they know, like, you know, like you can do that, you can do this pitch, but at the same time are there for if things, you know, go wrong and we need to bail. I just have a trustworthy partner, and I've been lucky enough to find multiples, you know, of every type of person in multiple states. So it's kind of, you know, I have the few here when I go to Colorado, when I go to Montana, when I go to Washington and Oregon, you know, like, okay, let's go do this stuff. So.
Awesome. All right,
Yeah.
so how about you?
I do really enjoy going out for long days by myself sometimes. I don't get bored. I like doing that. It's a really good way to kind of clear all the cobwebs out. But when I do go with someone, I think I look for resilience and a sense of humor. I recently went out on a run, kind of a recon run with my friend Erin, and we went up this ridge that was just, you know, it looked great on a map, but then it was totally covered in blowdown and trees, and we were just like constantly climbing over trees, and it just got like funnier and funnier. And I was like, as we were doing, and it was like miles and miles of that, and there was like no running, we're just like climbing over stuff. And I was just really thinking about him and how I appreciated that, you know, when something like that comes up, it's like, it wouldn't even occur to either of us to complain. It's just like funny, or, you know, it's just like what we're doing. So we just get, you know, it's like an obstacle in front of us and we get through it. And not everybody's like that. You know, a lot of people might get really cranky or, you know, start complaining about it instead of, so yeah, I mean, that's what really makes a great training partner to me.
Awesome.
Cool. So as women in the outdoors, do you feel empowered to be the best that you can be? Why or why not?
Yes. I think, you know, I think that it's trending towards a continual positive experience in the outdoors. And I have been super thankful since my time in the outdoors has kind of stemmed from being part of the courses I took in the Mountaineers, that it was just heavily, you know, kind of women instructors. When I say heavily, you know, there's 3 there versus none. Like that's huge, you know, and as it keeps growing, I think that I've just had a lot of support and a lot of instruction. Even with when I first joined, you know, there's a huge hesitancy with, you know, oh, like she has one hand, like how does she rappel safely? How does she belay safely? There's all these legitimate safety concerns, but it was really cool to see men and women kind of, you know, wonder, but then let me show what I could do safely, you know, or work with me to find ways. And so I felt really supported as an adaptive female climber, you know, in a normally like male dominated arena. I felt support beyond what I thought, you know, versus pushback or doubt. And I think that's really huge, to not a person's first assumption of me hasn't been doubt. You know, they've been very kind and accommodating. So that's a pretty lucky experience. It's not the same for everyone, but
not everyone has
For
that
sure.
experience.
Syd or Theresa, anything to add?
I do. I feel pretty empowered that, I mean, I feel really lucky. And also, I mean, I think as an ER nurse, I'm pretty assertive. So I don't necessarily feel, I mean, that's just like really bred into me for the last 15 years to, you know, kind of like, I feel pretty empowered that way. Like I don't feel as, I don't have any hesitation of going out alone. And I'm also just a really independent person that I would, you know, pretty determined to do what I'm going to do.
Theresa?
I feel like over the last couple of years, I've felt more empowered to go out and try like bigger things outside of my comfort zone. I wouldn't say that my like outdoor or climbing experience really started out that way. I think part of that is just like who I am as like a person. Like I've never been a particularly like assertive person. Like I've always kind of like shied away from stuff. And I still like go through a lot of like imposter syndrome type feelings and experiences, which I'm like gradually working through. But I'd actually say that one of the things that has empowered me over the last couple of years has been being a little more active on social media, like mainly Instagram, not so much Facebook. Facebook I have found to be like a little less empowering in some ways, but Instagram, where I've been able to kind of like follow certain accounts of like women in the outdoors that I admire and have just made me like realize like, oh, I can go out and like do that too. Like that, I don't know, just finding inspiration when I didn't really have it before. a lot of my initial like climbing education was in a very male dominated space, and so it was a very I guess not so empowering experience or just like didn't exactly make me feel that I belonged in that space. So like finding more women that were doing really awesome things outside over the last couple of years has helped me like step out of my own comfort zone and do things.
Awesome. So I guess, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can attest to that. Following the 4 of you on Instagram is like, oh, this is cool. Like, they can do it. Well, like, I could maybe do it too. So yeah, that aspire to inspire, it rings true. You're doing a good job. You're paying it forward.
Yep. I think now, like going kind of along those lines, we're going to switch gear and talk a little bit about adventuring with men, which has advantages and disadvantages. So for all those men tuning in, do you guys have anything that you'd recommend to them to make adventurous, badass women like yourself feel more welcomed? Like Theresa, I know you touched on, you kind of had a shaky start in that intro, and mountaineering is a very male-dominated sport. And is there anything that you wish that you could change, or any advice you have to our fellow male friends out there to help feel more welcoming?
So I actually made a list so I didn't get like super ranty.
Yeah.
Just so I could speak as like eloquently as possible. I don't know how eloquent this is going to be though, so whatever. So I made a couple of, I think, important points. And if they sound aggressive, they're meant to be.
Listen up, guys.
So I'll just kind of go with what I wrote. So the first thing I wrote was stop getting bent out of shape when you hear the word privilege being thrown around at you. And just like accept that you have it, and that your male privilege, it provides you with inherent advantages in the outdoors, in outdoor spaces that just generally and historically aren't there for women. So stop centering your feelings and stop with the not all men crap. So there's my first one. Kind of along the same lines, stop diminishing lived experiences by women that are like bringing them up, and pushing the whole outdoors doesn't discriminate narrative, or there's no room for politics in the outdoors narrative. Like just because you don't personally experience it doesn't mean it's not widely experienced by a whole community of people. And this is kind of ironic because I know we're on a panel right now, but stop asking women to educate you when there's a thing called Google that has lots of resources that you can look up, rather than asking women the same questions that they might actually hear all the time and are maybe tired of. I don't know.
Like what? Like what questions?
Kind of, I mean, honestly, similar to kind of what we're talking about now, like how can I do better? I feel like there's a lot of resources out there that you can educate yourself on, like how to understand women's experiences better, and how to educate yourself on what you have in terms of privileges compared to women's experiences. I feel like there's a lot out there that's really easy to find without having to like message women all the time about it and ask for their perspective all the time. Just personally, it depends on like who you're talking to. Like I maybe don't mind having conversations with people that I'm close to, but when like and this has happened like a few times, like on like Instagram or even Facebook, where like men that I don't know message me about what my experiences are. It's just kind of like, I don't know. It's like, I'm not going to put in the time for this when there's definitely places that you can go to get these questions answered without asking a bunch of individual women that you don't even know.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I had one more, and that was to like be better about standing up and calling out misogynistic crap when you see it happening, especially on like climbing forums or Facebook groups. I feel like I see that all the time. It makes it like a really unsafe space for women, and just like less safe for us to feel like, I mean, I should say that I'm maybe speaking from like my own personal experience. I don't want to say I'm speaking for like every woman's experience, but from my own personal experience, it definitely doesn't make me safe to go out and do anything with you, or to like even occupy the same space as you.
Yeah.
Those are all very powerful and valid feedback. Thank you.
Have you guys ever been in a situation where you had to make a tough call, or like turn around and like had male or female partners but disagree with your decision, or like kind of like try and push you like, oh, you're gonna be fine, like how do you stand your ground, or like how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's happened multiple times on, again, a lot of, trips that I'll lead or help lead for the Mountaineers. And I mean, discussion and disagreement and different viewpoints are healthy when they are respected and accepted in conversations and decision-making conversations on the mountain. But there's been times where it's, someone has summit fever and yet impending weather, or, other climbers that are with us, their exhaustion, like kind of all plays a part in why we should not continue. And so, with the Mountaineers, we kind of have a climber's code that really helps create those healthy boundaries in decision-making and helping people understand that it's a team effort and a team process. And yeah, I think the biggest thing is respect. If I have to make a tough call and it bums someone out really bad, it's really up to them to kind of carry their own heart and kind of handle their feelings, and with some, self-control and humility. So it's there, it happens. But I think as we all learn how to have engaging, healthy discussions with our differing opinions, like it can keep us safe and productive on climbs.
Yeah, totally. Having that upfront conversation and mutual respect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Syd, I know you do a lot of solo adventures. How do you make the decision with yourself to like, I need to turn around, or like maybe a little bit more on that 3 days lost in the woods? Like, what was going through your head there?
I'm pretty I have like way more adventures that I've turned around on or not done the full thing that I thought I was maybe going to do. I'm pretty conservative to turn around. I mean, if I've always found that kind of just following my gut instinct about that is the right thing to do. And I haven't had the experience with that you were talking about. I mean, something that I do have run into a lot on when I'm out is like this commentary that I get of, whether it's like climbing Y East or out running on a trail, where like both men and women will say to me things like, oh, you're really far from the trailhead, or a lot of men stopping me to ask me, especially mountain climbing, to ask me if I have what I need, or kind of, and I'm like, there's no reason for that, or telling me, trail running, I've had people tell me like, oh, you're getting really dirty, or it's gonna get dark soon, or and it's like, it's just interesting to kind of flip it around and imagine, like, nobody would ever say that to a man, like, that's like, all of those things, like, nobody would ever stop a man and ask him like if he knows what he's doing, climbing this mountain, or being that far from a trailhead, or it that just like doesn't happen.
I've done it. I've questioned men on the mountain. Like, you want to continue? And kind of shows it's a little icy, but so yeah.
Are those yak tracks holding up?
Right. Yeah, but I just so agree with what you're saying. So like the importance of, it's okay to like engage with a person and find out what they're doing, but when the first assumption is always they don't know what they're doing, they must be in trouble, I can save them, it just has a negative connotation. Like, we want to feel when we're out in the mountains that we're capable. We want people to assume that, because we know we are. And so I think that, yeah, that's a great point that you make.
Yeah. I think a couple of years ago, I made like a social media post about this, but there was like the time that there was a couple mountain bikers, I think, that were killed by a mountain lion, and then there was a woman hiking in by Mount Hood who was killed by a mountain lion, and there's kind of all this fear, and there was a lot of men athletes who like I heard saying like, well, now everyone was kind of afraid of these mountain lions, and I heard just a lot of men saying like, well, now we have to like go in groups, or we have to go at certain times of the day, or you thinking about carrying a weapon or whatever, and it really kind of struck me all at once of like, these guys, they've never had to think about this before, because this is something that women do have to think about, think about what you wear, and and it drives me crazy when I see sometimes I see women post on social media that they had a creepy experience running or trail running, and then like all these guys chime in and they say, oh, you should carry mace, you should carry a gun, you should do this, you should do that, like, just, maybe they're trying to be helpful, but yeah, this like blaming that, or like maybe that man should not have been creepy, and there's no like holding men accountable in that time. And yeah, that I think that like that's something that I wish men thought more about, and I was glad that like with the mountain lion example that they had that experience of just kind of knowing what, kind of just having to think about having to change your route maybe, or having to not go to a certain place, or maybe going with a friend, or maybe planning different time of the day, like just having that experience. And I hope that they would think about that point to kind of understand what it might be like for what women think about every day, and we don't even think about it because we're thinking about it. It's just like second nature.
Yeah, it's like we have to think about the mountain lion, but also the people that we're out there encountering.
Yes, like definitely the scariest animal is the human.
Totally. Let's see, there's so many good questions.
I'm like trying to keep track of the chat and like questions. Kimber, we had someone ask, what's the most challenging part of climbing with a prosthetic ice tool, and have you found any advantages?
Yeah, so disadvantages, it's a little heavier than a normal ice tool, and as an alpinist, we're always looking for the lightest way possible to bring everything up. And so putting that on any pack is always a little bit heavier. And, you know, I don't have that wrist flick. And so there's just a different technique that I use to get a good stick in the ice with my prosthetic on. So, you know, my shoulder gets pretty beefy by the end of the ice climbing season. I'm still working on regulating, keeping my hand, my stump warm just with the poor circulation, and, you know, having a silicone liner that doesn't stay warm. And so those are just little things that I have to mitigate when I'm out there and plan for. But I think an advantage, a silver lining, is really I can hang on it and not get what is referred to as the screaming barfies, you know, because I don't have a grip. I'm not holding, you know, this on a grip. So pretty much I can just like hang on it using my joint and take my sweet time putting in a screw. Although, you know, I still work on being fast and efficient, but it is the silver lining when the climbers look at me like, what? Like, you can hang on forever? You know, because really getting tired and letting go is, you know, a danger. And so, yeah, I call it a silver lining, and, you know, kind of smile and wink and like, well, you still got it, you know, that the two-hand benefit. So, but yeah.
Small price to pay for not getting the screaming barfies. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Syd, we've got a question from the audience for you now. So someone's wondering, how many hours and or days does it take to run 100 miles?
Well, I think the cutoff for the race is 32 hours. My goal would probably be closer to 25 hours.
Wow. It's impressive. Yeah. So for something like that, and then even gonna pose the question to Kimber and Theresa as well, like, how much planning do you do before that event? And what do you look for resources to help you plan for those things? I mean, weather has a factor in that. I'm assuming in some races are super well marked, but others are kind of involve a little bit of route finding. So do you look at maps? Like, what sort of data sources do you look for in those?
You know, I'm like really looking forward to running a race where like the course is marked and I don't have to think about it, because I'm part of like the real gratification of doing like self-supported adventures is, especially by myself, is figuring out the navigation, because that's such a huge part of it, and have, you know, such a bigger kind of sense of accomplishment. But I mean, to me, like doing a race, it's like you're just running from aid station to aid station where people like have food for you, and then they're like pointing the way to go. Like it's totally easy. You know, I mean, and then it's really just I'm not like I don't have the option, I mean, with kind of have, you know, parenting and all that, like of doing a real stringent training protocol. So I'm really just trying to maximize the days that I do have. And I mean, I'm really kind of like, I think, you know, I hear a lot of female athletes say that, you know, they look at other people's Instagram and they feel so insecure, or the other people's Strava, and they're like, I should be, you know, they feel like they should be doing this, or that they're, you know, they get, and I feel like I almost get like the reverse motivation thing where and you know, maybe it's because I work in the emergency room. Like I go to work and I see like so many people are struggling and they're injured and they're hurt, and I'm like, I'm doing pretty good. Like I don't need to push myself as hard. And I think I kind of sometimes have a harder time. I'm just like grateful to be not injured and to be healthy. And you know, I already know I think doing like a really long day or a long distance is just about it's just so much in your head, you know, like you need to train some, but it's really about just kind of like mental perseverance.
Completely. Yeah. I mean, the mental fortitude required to run 100 miles is just something I can't even fathom. So chops off to you. Kimber and Theresa, do you have any specific weather or navigation apps or resources that you use?
Yeah. So, when I'm planning a climb, if it's, a team of, like in the Mountaineers, basic students, who I haven't climbed with and whatnot, a lot of times, I'm setting up a route and kind of a climb trip. I'll send out an email that will kind of just separate out group gear and individual gear. I'll give the trip beta. So I usually use Summit Post. The Mountaineers also have their own kind of beta catalog, and I'll send those links out. I use NOAA and Mountain Forecast simultaneously and put those in an email. That way, kind of everyone on my team, like, you're all responsible to understand, the route and understand kind of what the weather's going to be doing, because I want everyone to be able to voice their opinion and be a part of that decision-making process when we're in the middle of a climb. And so planning for specific climbs, I'll put them out on the calendar months out, but that week before, really, if it's on a Saturday, Sunday, I'm sending an email out 2 weeks prior, getting confirmation of participation. And this is, in or out of mountaineering climbs, just whoever I'm with. And then a good email that Monday before, where, by Wednesday, we have it pretty dialed as far as we all have the details we need. And then we all have group gear assigned and divvied out, and where we're going to meet at the trailhead, how we're going to carpool. Carpooling is like a big thing for me, just kind of the less cars at the trailhead, the better, and just sharing the gas responsibilities. But yeah, so that's usually what I go for. Gaia is a really awesome app that I use on my phone, and it's really easy to go and find tracks that someone else has made, or I'll email certain people I know, and there's a lot of Facebook groups that people are posting their beta and have those tracks, and you can email them and download them. And so, if I'm doing a climb and it's a whiteout, like, I have that track that's really guiding me. And I have, the navigation skills with a compass and a map if my phone goes dead. And so those are kind of the key elements when I'm out on climbs.
Great. Yeah, there's so many good resources out there, and I think, like you just mentioned, having the knowledge to be able to navigate outside of using your phone in case, shit hits the fan is super important.
So we've got mental endurance from Syd, the logistics from Kimber. What about on the route, Theresa? What's in your, like, running vest or pack or whatever when you're hitting the trail for a big day?
I guess it kind of depends on if it's like a local big day, like maybe something like in Forest Park, for example, then it's usually not much except for maybe like snacks. But like as I get like further and further out or more remote, I especially for like I like going light and fast, but try to still carry like as many of the leave no trace 10 essentials as I can. So I usually try to carry like a small first aid kit, like plenty of food and water, of course, or like a filter. I use the, gosh, what is that called? I already forgot the name of it. I'm sure some people have,
Be free.
yeah, that one that's got the filter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that one for when I know there's like water sources, so I don't have to carry as much water. But yeah, so first aid kit, food and water. I'll usually carry an inReach. I have almost never had to use it except for one time when I was in the pickets, and it wasn't an emergency, but it was definitely nice to have to get in touch with somebody for a specific reason. But I'll usually carry that if I'm going to be out for a long time or like in a remote location. Let's see. Like any type of like extra layers that I can fit, but that are still like on the minimal side, I guess. Like whatever I can fit in like a small backpack or a running vest for like long, like ultra running distance type stuff. Let's see. Oh, like emergency shelter, like a tarp or a bivy sack. Like that's actually come in handy a couple times. Yeah, I think that's, I mean, obviously there's like more stuff in my pack, but like in terms of like emergency gear and stuff, like those are things that I try to carry on every bigger adventure, I guess, to make sure I have.
It sounds like a pretty solid list. All right, well, we are approaching the hour and 15-minute mark, so just gonna start to wrap it up. Go ahead, Mal, do you wanna ask the second to last question?
Yeah, so before we finish, want to talk a little bit about the communities that you guys are involved with. So to start off, Theresa, can you tell us a little bit more about the group Pacific Northwest Outdoor Women that you're an ambassador for?
Yeah. So it's a Facebook group. I will admit I don't know how many members are in the group right now. I actually deactivated my Facebook a few months ago, so I've been like a little bit out of the loop. But I know there's like in the tens of thousands of women in this group. And we're a diverse, inclusive group of women, kind of spread out, I would say mostly centered in Washington, because all of the founders are from Washington. So a lot of, I feel like the majority of the members of the group are in Washington and like kind of closer to like central to northern Washington, but also spread out into Oregon. I want to say Northern California, into parts of BC, and then I think also Idaho. So it's a really big group. And as an ambassador, I try to put together events to kind of connect women in my area, in like the Portland area, and also like Southwest Washington, like Vancouver area. So I usually will do like hikes. I've done Leave No Trace classes. I actually took a Leave No Trace Master Educator course a couple years ago, so I tried to like incorporate that education into the events that I do. And then I also will do like little like mini snow skills courses where I'll invite like usually a small group of women for like safety reasons, to practice like using an ice axe for the first time or putting on crampons, and just practice using those tools, and hopefully getting more women interested in like pursuing mountaineering, or just at least getting interested enough to like pursue further education in it, so you can see more women out there.
Awesome.
Sweet. Well, we'll have to check it out, and I'm sure we'll be sending out links to their information here so the rest of the audience can check them out as well. Syd, go ahead and tell us about the 3 Corner Rock 50K and why anyone thinking about signing up for a 50K should sign up for this race.
Yes. So this race, it's been in existence for, this will be the 13th year, I think. I had kind of just randomly, so it's in Washington, and it's on the Pacific Crest Trail, and basically runners are shuttled out north, and then they run 31 miles south on the PCT. and at a time that I was running a lot of ultras, I kind of came across that race and ran it. I ran it for the first time, and I just loved it. It was small. It's capped at 100 people. I think, usually it's like 60 or 70 people. But like the volunteer crews that show up, it's our people who aren't necessarily runners, and they're just like local people who are super stoked that runners are showing up and doing this. And just the care put into the aid stations and the finish line was just something that I had not seen or experienced in other, with other like race companies. And I think the difference is that it's volunteer run. It's people that are just like for the sport of it, for the love of it, and just want to make it a really great event. And it's also a lot of local people run it. It's as like kind of like the one big thing they do all for the year, which I think is really cool. And so I ended up running it 5 years in a row, and it was just like my favorite race of the year. And then the race director said, I heard that she was like letting it go, or she was going to stop doing it because it's a lot of work. And I just thought like I could do that, and I could take that on. And so I started doing it. This will be the 3rd year that I'm directing it. And there's a lot of the just kind of main spirit of it that was really important to me to not change. So it's still, it's financially really accessible. It's $75 to get in, which is way cheaper than most other races. And you get like there's a great burrito bar at the end. There's like really good aid stations. I put a lot of work into getting things donated, and it's also it's totally volunteer run, and it's like all the proceeds go to the Stevenson, Washington cross country team at the high school. And the high school kids come out and they like run an aid station, and they volunteer, and they help set everything up. And they like, they're awesome kids, and they're like a really good cross country team, which I think in that area, which is not, which is kind of like it's not a wealthy area of Washington in the Gorge, and to have that access for kids, high school kids, I think is super important. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest. Like I can't, and I wasn't athletic at all. That wasn't even on my radar. And I think, I think about being a high school kid and being able to run trails in the Washington Gorge. Like that's so cool. And like what a great outlet or thing for them to do. So supporting their team is like the main kind of thing of the race. And yeah, like why would you not do it? It's the best race ever.
Well, you may have sold me a burrito bar. When is the race? Awesome. Well, Kimber, can you share with us just a little bit about Paradox Sports and what you found in that community?
Yeah, so Paradox Sports is based in El Dorado Springs, Colorado. Really, it's an organization that offers adaptive climbing opportunities to really make climbing accessible to all. And they focus on indoor and outdoor rock, ice climbing. Obviously in this picture below, the little circle, like there I am. 2 seasons ago, I went out to Ouray, where they have an adaptive ice climbing festival, and it's just so incredible. Like professional athletes come out and volunteer their time, and everyone gets out on ice, and it's so fun. And as well as mountaineering, they also do mountaineering things. And so this organization puts on events all around the country. They were out at Smith Rock, getting people with even, this one young boy had a recent leg amputation and a new prosthetic, and to see him get on rock for the first time outside and just crush it was so amazing. And so, yeah, it's a organization that I'm just honored to be a part of stoked to see so many people give their time and efforts to make access equitable for the outdoors. And in the Northwest, there's an organization separate from Paradox that I'll quickly talk about, Outdoors for All. So the Outdoors for All Foundation provides therapeutic and adaptive recreation tools and events for children and adults. So if you look for Paradox Sports on Instagram, Outdoors for All on Instagram, you'll learn a lot more and maybe be able to participate in the events that they put on.
Awesome. Those all sound like great communities to be a part of and awesome organizations to look for support in each of the different endeavors. I just want to wrap it up real quick with a little bit of advice for anyone tuning in. Real quick, each of you get like 2 minutes to give what your biggest piece of advice would be for anyone who wants to go out and do the big epic adventures you guys do, but doesn't know where to start.
I'm gonna drop another line of recommendation, the Mountaineers. That's where I started, where I could get instruction. So when I went to crush all my goals of the mountains, I had the tools and the skill set and the community. So.
Theresa?
I'll kind of like bounce off of what Kimber was saying, just like going out and or seeking out that community first. I think having a support system, even if it's just like a friend to go out running with you like once or twice a week, or a group that you go out and hike with on the weekends, like that's kind of how I initially got started in the outdoors before mountaineering, was just seeking out like women specific groups that just went hiking on the weekends, and that kind of was like a huge catalyst for me to feel safe, pushing my comfort zone.
Yeah. I would say, start somewhere and just start pushing your comfort zone. When I started trail running, I was like so scared of getting lost. I mean, and I would just go out and back on Leif Erikson, because it's like this wide fire road in Forest Park. And then I would start like adding on one little trail like out and back. And it's as you get more comfortable, it just becomes second nature. I used to be so scared of it getting dark like that. And now that doesn't seem like a big deal to me at all. Like if it's dark, you just put on a headlamp and it's not a big deal. And I think, also it's really important to acknowledge that if there was a study that people observed playgrounds and kids and saw that, and they noted this really big difference in how girls and boys were on the playground, with moms and dads telling like girls to be careful, watch out, oh, get off of that, and boys doing the same thing. They were encouraged and given instruction. And so like we've been taught from, we've been trained to be afraid since we were kids. And so like that, that's just really important to remember, I think. And that's like a place to start, and to start like unpacking that and unlearning that as an adult. And it's a process, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, your first two things you brought up about being afraid of getting lost. I mean, you got lost in the woods for 3 days. That's completely valid. And two, I'm shocked that you're still trail running if you were running up and down Leif Erikson. Like, oh man. Kimber, you haven't experienced this, but like, it's basically this like awful, sort of rocky, but sort of not, like gravelly, but like washed out gravel road that like no trail runner ever wants to run on. So props to you, Syd, for sticking with the sport. All right, well, that's some pretty great advice to end on from some incredible ladies. Tonight's show has been great. I'm inspired and ready to get out and tackle some big adventures. Syd, Theresa, and Kimber, thank you all for joining us tonight. It was great to talk with you ladies. Hear your stories and spread the stoke among the women in the Pacific Northwest community, and men, for all the men tuning in.
That's the end of this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below so you never miss an episode. We love hearing from our audience, so if you have feedback, would like to discuss these topics further, or if you or someone you know would be a good future guest, please let us know. Until next time, remember, adventure is better together.